Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Betsy Bohan, and today's video is a question and answer video on hard questions about God and biblical Christianity. Today I'm going to be talking about, did God really make me? Join me back in just a moment. Welcome back to the question today that I'm going to be answering, did God make me? So I'm going to address the two big theories about the creation of man. First is the actual creation account in the Bible, which is considered not only a scriptural or religious text, but also historical text that was handed down initially by word of mouth, and then the first person to pen the books in the Bible was Moses. The first 5 books of the Bible, also known as the Torah, were penned by Moses, and then others penned the other books. And so the creation account in here is captured in Genesis 1, 2, and 3 of God creating the world and then creating his very favorite creation, which was man, that he made in his image. And when God looked at his creation, after it had all been created in 6 days, he said it was good. In fact, he pronounced it very good. There's also the other theory of creation, and that is Darwin's theory of evolution. Now, I'm going to be contrasting the two. And just so you know, many that used to believe in evolution and Darwinism have since gone more away from it, because at the time that Darwin wrote his books on his theory of evolution, he didn't have the scientific experience that we have now, such as DNA, and also the missing transitional species that he thought, and this thing that he developed called pangenesis. So all these things are now problematic with evolution. I have a few other concerns about evolution, and I'll go there in just a moment. When we look at being created by a God who created things in an orderly manner, all you have to do is look and read Genesis 1 to see how we started with probably the least complicated, which was the night and the day, and moving to the most complicated, which were man and women. God shows that he is a being of order and creation. Now, when God created us, he indicated that it was for relationship, because he walked with man and woman in the cool of the day in the garden. So there was value that he placed on his creation, and especially on man, because in Matthew 10 and in verses, it talks about where he's instructing his disciples not to be afraid. He instructs them in verses 29 through 31 about to look at the sparrows, because not a one of them fall from the sky that the Father doesn't know it. And he says, oh, just be encouraged and don't fear, because you are worth more than many sparrows. And God, the Father, even has all the hairs on your head numbered. Now that shows an intimacy and a knowing of the creation. It shows a valuing of the created being. It shows a value that God indeed loves his creation, so he knows these little birds, And in other verses, it talks about how he provides for the animals. And even in Jonah, he says that the cattle are innocent. And so if we look at that, God values creation and mostly values the species. Okay, we're going to go science here. The species of the Homo sapiens, which apparently in science they say man is the only Homo sapiens of that type of species left. Very interesting. So also in Psalm 139, where David is writing, and remember, as a Christian, we do believe that all biblical text, and it even says in Timothy, is inspired and profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, and instruction in righteousness, and that the Word of God has power inherently. So in Psalm 139, when David is writing that, verse 13, you formed my innermost being and you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. It says, you saw my unformed body, and my days were written in your book, ordained for me before one of them came to be. Now, isn't that amazing? That shows a connection between the Creator and those he created, and a love relationship, a covenant relationship. So, next, I'd like to compare that to Darwinism and evolution. So let's take a look at Darwinism's theory of evolution, but we can't take a look at that without looking at the man himself who created this theory. Now, there's many books written about Darwin and his faith journey, and was he a Christian, even how long, and how did that happen and fall away, and was he a man of faith at the end? So there's different theories, but in my research, what I have found to be true, and most that I can see has more of the historical context, is that actually he was a Christian. And in 1831, he was a sincere Christian. He was actually taking classes and studies for pastoral ministry in college. But then, by his death in 1882, he really declared himself an agnostic. And that was a term that was actually created by his friend Thomas Henry Huxley. And it was to denote an inability to reach a certainty about either the existence or non-existence about God. Darwin never really referred to himself as an atheist, but at least on one occasion he referred to himself as a devil's chaplain, which in more recent times that name was co-opted by Richard Dawkins. Now, the two things that really seem to affect Darwin and his belief in evolution, now when he started it, he was a Christian and seemed to have a belief in God, but what happened during this time was that his father died and passed away in 1848, and he struggled so much with this. And I think it was that it seems that his father must not have been a Christian believer, because he had been found to say in one book, and his wife was so distressed over it that initially on print she had that deleted, although later it was put on, and it was that he called the doctrine of eternal punishment for non-believers a damnable doctrine, because it would have included his father and his brother and almost all his best friends, he said, would have been in eternal punishment. So he couldn't quite put his mind around that. And so that caused him to start to doubt his Christianity and struggle. So then his daughter, 10-year-old Annie, in 1851, 3 days after Easter, died of what they thought was tuberculosis. And they had 10 children, he and his wife Emma, and out of the 10, 8 lived, and Annie was his favorite. In fact, he had a picture of her that was done at when she was 7, and she passed at 10, but he kept that picture all his life because it was so, he had loved her so, and it was so important to him. And so that was the final draw. It was like his father was the beginning of his struggle and his death, and having to bring himself to try and think about the doctrine of eternal punishment. And that is a hard question for another day that I'll answer. And also then with his daughter passing away at the age of 10. That was kind of the final stake, where I think it was that he actually had years of backsliding before he finally broke with Christianity, because it was Annie and the struggle over her and her death and his loss of her that really put him at odds with his faith. So then he didn't have to deal with that really so much anymore, and it affected his beliefs. But the one thing is, he was a created being, and here is a man not unlike us that was out of thin air, basically, because again, science has proven that so many of his suppositions and theories and hypotheses were erroneous. He did not understand the complexity of DNA. He did not understand how species were continued on. There were many gaps in this transition from one type of species to the next, or one level to the next level of evolution. So really, the Big Bang, I think, is just kind of a fizzle, actually. And so when I think about a man doing this, I think about how arrogant it is of any of us to think that we could say there is no God when we ourselves can't even see the nose on our front of our face. Really, I can't see it. Can you see your nose? Unless you look at it in the mirror, which reverses it, and you see it a different way, or you cross your eyes. So either way, it's not a truthful representation of what your nose really looks like, and that's on the front of our faces. To think that we would have, really, I think, the audacity and foolishness to say there is no God if you've never been on the other side of death. And we know that there's been many near-death experiences and things that have been documented over time. But here, what I'm bringing to the front is that this was a man, Darwin, who struggled with belief in God, who that ultimately came to be part of Darwinism. And then what I think is so sad is that with evolution, there is no cherishing or valuing of the species. It's just, it's a creepy crawly thing that evolved, and then it went from this stage to this stage, and the fittest survive. And so there's really no love. I mean, where do all these love and peace and joy, all these emotional things come from? Have you ever thought of that? If we're just kind of this thing that happens, and they don't even know when things are going to happen. I mean, we have been in this stage that we're in for thousands of years. Shouldn't something have happened by now? Shouldn't we have grown horns or a tail? I mean, seriously, folks. So I think the question too, so when, this is really interesting, if you believe in a creator God who values life, then ultimately, if you believe in God and creation, you also value life. And you will do what it takes to support life, whether it's animal life or human lives. You're willing to sacrifice to be able to preserve those lives and to help those lives. But in evolution, if there's really no God and the fittest survive, and you have to think, well, if those people are sick and ill, do we really want that kind of genetics to go on? I mean, shouldn't we just let them perish? I mean, seriously, in some places in the world, they have similar things like this when you have a caste system and you think that people are lower down and they deserve what they get, or that's just them and they don't help them. Yeah, it's sad, but true. Think about it. If there's no value in the creation, if you're just come about because of a big bang or creepy crawlies that crawl out of little water and creep up into the earth and start, developing into different things, I mean, where's the value? Where's the importance of that creation? Yes. I don't think a lot of people think about that. To me, when we are showing God said that He created us in His image, we are showing that we have value. When you really believe that, there is a natural inclination in people to know that they should be valued, loved, and respected. And when we're not, it's upsetting to us. Why do you think we have that sense? Why do you think we have a sense that we want to be around with other people? All these things. Is it really just developed? It is not part of being around in ecology or any of that. It is put into us by God. It is innate to our created being. So that's all I'm going to say for now. And I challenge you to read the Bible, to pray, to ask God to reveal Himself to you. Did He make you? Does He love you? Does He want to be part of your life? I know with the fact, the God of the Bible, who addresses and says His name to Moses in Exodus 3, verses 14 and 15, when Moses says, "What is your name?" And God says, "My name is I Am. I Am is my name, and that is the name I am to be known for all generations." Check it out. Read about that. And in Hebrew, that word is Yahweh. And the Tetragrammaton, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can search that up too. But it is the name of the biblical God, the God of creation. So I want to thank you for joining me here today. And once again, I present food for thought when I answer hard questions about God and biblical Christianity. If you want to send me a question to answer, you can put it in the comments, or you can contact me via my website at www.betsybohan.com. I have a contact form. You can send me a question or whatever. And also please sign up for my free monthly newsletter where I let you know what I'm going to be doing each and every month. And sometimes I will give extra information that's valuable for you in your life. So thanks again for joining me. And until next week, may God bless you and may He keep you.